Kids, today I'm going to tell you a story that's so incredible. Sometimes even I can't believe I lived through it myself. It was the winter of 1899, and I was just a young man of 25, working in a small electrical repair shop on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The world was changing fast in those days. Edison's electric light bulbs were becoming more common, but most people still used gas lamps and candles after dark. I remember that particular December evening like it was yesterday. Snow was falling heavy outside my little shop, and I was just about to close up for the night when this tall, thin man burst through my door. He was soaking wet from the snow. His dark hair was wild, and his eyes, Lord have mercy, his eyes were like lightning bolts themselves. They seemed to see right through everything, as if he was looking at some invisible world the rest of us couldn't see. "Young man," he said to me in this thick accent I couldn't quite place, "do you truly understand electricity, or do you just repair Edison's simple bulbs?" Well, that got my back up a little. I was proud of my work, even if it was just fixing light bulbs and the occasional telegraph machine. "I understand it well enough," I said. "Been working with electrical devices for 3 years now. Name's William, by the way." The stranger smiled, but it wasn't a mocking smile. It was more like he knew some wonderful secret that he was dying to share. "William," he said, extending a thin, pale hand, "my name is Nikola Tesla, and if you have 1 hour to spare, I will show you that everything you think you know about electricity is just the beginning of a much greater story." Now, I'd heard whispers about Tesla around the electrical community. Folks said he was some kind of genius who'd worked for Edison, but then had a falling out. Some called him a madman. Others called him the greatest inventor alive. I was curious enough to want to find out for myself. "All right, Mr. Tesla," I said, "show me what you've got." That's when Tesla did something that changed my life forever. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out what looked like a small metal tube, no bigger than a cigar. When he pressed a tiny button on its side, every light bulb in my shop suddenly blazed to life, even the ones that weren't connected to anything, even the ones I kept in storage boxes on my shelves. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "How in the Sam Hill did you do that?" Tesla's eyes twinkled with delight. "Wireless transmission of electrical power, my young friend. What you just witnessed is only a tiny demonstration of what's possible. Would you like to see more?" Before I could even answer, Tesla was already heading back out into the snow. "Come," he said. "My laboratory is only 6 blocks from here. Tonight, William, you will witness the birth of the electrical age." I grabbed my coat and followed this mysterious man out into the blizzard. As we walked through the nearly empty streets, Tesla talked nonstop about his vision for the future. He spoke of a world where electricity would flow through the air like invisible rivers, where people could communicate instantly across vast distances, where machines would do the work of thousands of men. "You think I'm mad," Tesla said, noticing my skeptical expression. "Well, sir," I admitted, "it does sound pretty far-fetched." Tesla laughed, a rich, warm sound that echoed off the snow-covered buildings. "William, let me tell you something. 6 months ago, I demonstrated a remote-controlled boat to a crowd of scientists and journalists. I made this boat move left, right, forward, backward, just by pressing buttons on a small device in my hand. Do you know what they called it?" "What?" "Magic. They said it was impossible, that I must have a trained monkey hidden inside the boat." Tesla shook his head. "The human mind has great difficulty accepting what it cannot immediately understand. But you, William, you have the eyes of someone who wants to learn. That's why I chose to show you my work." When we reached Tesla's laboratory, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The building looked ordinary enough from the outside, just another 4-story brick structure like hundreds of others in the city. But the moment Tesla opened the door and led me inside, I knew I was entering another world entirely. The main room was vast, with a ceiling that stretched up 3 full stories. Along the walls were machines unlike anything I'd ever imagined. Coils of wire as tall as a man, strange glass tubes that glowed with their own inner light, devices covered in dials and switches and meters. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, and I could feel the hair on my arms standing up. "Welcome," Tesla said, "to the laboratory where the future is being born." He led me to a massive coil in the center of the room, easily 8 feet tall and wrapped in thousands of turns of copper wire. "This," he said proudly, "is what I call a Tesla coil. It transforms ordinary household electricity into something much more powerful and useful." "What does it do?" "Watch and learn, my friend." Tesla threw a large switch on the wall, and suddenly the entire laboratory came alive. The giant coil began to hum, then whine, then produce a sound like nothing I'd ever heard, a deep, thrumming note that seemed to vibrate in my bones. Purple and blue sparks began dancing around the top of the coil, growing brighter and brighter until they became actual bolts of lightning, crackling and snapping through the air. I backed away in terror, but Tesla walked calmly toward the coil. When he was just 3 feet away from those deadly lightning bolts, he reached out his hand. Instead of being electrocuted, the lightning seemed to flow around his fingers like water, creating the most beautiful display of blue and purple light I'd ever seen. "Impossible," I gasped. "Not impossible," Tesla corrected, "just misunderstood. High-frequency alternating current behaves very differently from the direct current that Edison uses. At these frequencies, electricity flows around the surface of conductors rather than through them. My body becomes part of the electrical circuit, but I am not harmed." To prove his point, Tesla picked up an ordinary incandescent light bulb from a nearby table. He held it up near the coil, and it immediately began to glow with brilliant white light, even though it wasn't connected to any wires. "This is wireless power transmission," Tesla explained. "The electrical energy from my coil is transmitted through the air itself. Imagine, William, a world where there are no power lines, no electrical wires running through city streets. Every home, every factory, every street lamp could receive power directly from the Earth itself." "But how is that possible?" Tesla's eyes grew distant, as if he was seeing something far beyond the walls of the laboratory. "The Earth is a conductor, William. Our entire planet is like a giant electrical circuit. If we can find the right frequency, the right resonance, we can make the entire Earth ring like a bell with electrical energy. Power generated at one point could be received anywhere on the planet." Over the next 4 hours, Tesla showed me invention after invention, each one more incredible than the last. He demonstrated a motor that ran on alternating current, far more efficient than anything Edison had produced. He showed me a device that could send messages through the air without wires, and another that could control machines from a distance. But the most amazing demonstration came near midnight. Tesla led me to a corner of the laboratory where a strange device sat covered by a heavy cloth. When he pulled away the covering, I saw something that looked like a cross between a telescope and a giant electrical machine. "This," Tesla said solemnly, "is my greatest achievement so far, and my most dangerous." "What does it do?" "It allows me to communicate with intelligences on other worlds." I thought he was pulling my leg, but Tesla's face was deadly serious. He began adjusting dials and switches on the machine, and soon it was producing a steady series of electrical pulses. Dot, dot, dash, dash, dot. "I've been receiving signals like this for months now," Tesla explained. "They're coming from the direction of Mars. The pattern is too regular, too mathematical to be natural phenomena. There is intelligent life out there, William, and they're trying to communicate with us." Whether Tesla was really talking to Martians or just picking up some unknown electrical interference, I'll never know. But I could see that he absolutely believed what he was telling me. And given all the other impossible things I'd seen that night, who was I to say he was wrong? As the night wore on, Tesla told me about his ongoing war with Thomas Edison. "Edison is a great inventor," he said, "but he's also a businessman first and foremost. He's invested heavily in direct current systems, and he sees my alternating current as a threat to his empire." "Is it?" Tesla nodded grimly. "AC current is superior in every way. It can be transmitted over vast distances with minimal loss of power. It can be easily transformed to different voltages for different uses." "Edison's DC system requires a power station every few miles, while my AC system can serve an entire city from a single plant. So why doesn't everyone just switch to your system?" "Because Edison has convinced many people that AC current is dangerous. He's been conducting public demonstrations where he electrocutes animals with high-voltage AC current, trying to prove that it's too dangerous for home use. He even convinced the state of New York to use AC current in their new electric chair, hoping people would associate my invention with death. The sadness in Tesla's voice when he spoke of these demonstrations broke my heart. Here was a man who had dedicated his life to improving the human condition, and his greatest rival was using his own inventions as tools of destruction to discredit him. But people will see the truth eventually, won't they? I asked. Tesla's expression brightened. They will indeed. In fact, I've just signed a contract with George Westinghouse to build AC power systems across the country. Next year, we're going to light the Chicago World's Fair with alternating current, 90,000 electric lights, all powered by my system. When people see that spectacle, they'll understand that AC is the future. Tesla was right about that, as he was right about so many things. The Chicago World's Fair of 1893 was indeed a turning point. When visitors saw the entire fairground blazing with electric light, all powered by Tesla's AC system, the superiority of his technology became undeniable. Within a decade, AC current had become the standard for electrical power throughout the world. But that night in Tesla's laboratory, all of that was still in the future. What I saw was a lonely genius, working 18 hours a day in pursuit of visions that most people thought were impossible. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Tesla," I said. "How did you come to understand electricity so well?" Tesla's face grew thoughtful. "I was born in what is now Serbia, in a small mountain village called Smiljan. My father was an Orthodox priest who wanted me to follow in his footsteps, but from my earliest childhood, I was fascinated by the phenomena of nature. Lightning storms, in particular, held an almost mystical attraction for me." He paused to adjust one of his machines, then continued. "When I was 7 years old, our village was struck by a tremendous thunderstorm. Lightning bolts were crashing down all around us, and while everyone else was hiding in their cellars, I stood at our window watching the electrical display in absolute wonder. That night, I decided that I would spend my life learning to harness the power of lightning itself." "And your family supported this interest?" Tesla laughed bitterly. "Quite the opposite. My father wanted me to become a priest. My mother wanted me to be a scholar of literature. When I told them I wanted to study engineering, they threatened to disown me. It was only when I became seriously ill, nearly died in fact, that my father finally agreed to let me pursue my studies in electrical science." Tesla went on to tell me about his years of education in Austria and Hungary, his early work with telephone companies, and his eventual journey to America. "I arrived in New York with nothing but the clothes on my back and a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison," he said. "I thought Edison would be a kindred spirit, a fellow inventor who would appreciate my ideas. But that didn't work out. At first, it seemed promising. Edison hired me to improve his DC generators, and I worked day and night to make his systems more efficient. But when I showed him my AC motor design, he dismissed it as impractical. 'Tesla,' he said, 'if you can improve my DC generators, I'll pay you $50,000. So I did exactly that. I completely redesigned his systems, making them far more efficient and reliable." "And did Edison pay you the $50,000? Tesla's laugh was bitter. He claimed it had been a joke. "Tesla," he said, "you don't understand American humor." That's when I knew I could never work for Thomas Edison again. The betrayal still clearly stung Tesla, even years later, but instead of dwelling on his anger, he had channeled his energy into proving that his technology was superior. And from everything I saw that night, he was succeeding brilliantly. As dawn began to break over New York City, Tesla showed me one final invention. It was a small device, no larger than a pocket watch, with several dials and a tiny antenna protruding from its top. "This," he said, "may be the most important thing I ever create." "What is it?" "A device for wireless communication, not just sending signals like the telegraph, but actual human voices. Someday, William, every person on Earth will carry a device like this. They'll be able to talk to anyone, anywhere in the world, instantly." I shook my head in disbelief. "That sounds like something from a fairy tale." "Does it?" Tesla activated the device, and suddenly I heard a voice coming from the tiny speaker, a man in Philadelphia reading the morning news. "Distance means nothing to electrical waves, William. They travel at the speed of light itself. A message sent from New York reaches London in a fraction of a second. But how could everyone afford such a device? Tesla smiled mysteriously. Because the network itself will be free, just as I plan to make electrical power free for all humanity. The Earth's natural electrical charge can support both power transmission and communication for every person alive, without cost to anyone. That morning, as I walked back to my shop through the awakening city, my mind was reeling with everything I'd seen and heard. Tesla had shown me a vision of the future that was almost beyond imagination. A world of wireless power and communication where distance was no barrier to human connection and where clean, abundant energy was available to everyone. I didn't see Tesla again for several months after that extraordinary night. I heard rumors about his work, that he was building some kind of massive tower on Long Island, that he was planning to transmit power wirelessly across the Atlantic Ocean. Some people called him a visionary. Others called him a dangerous madman. Then, in the spring of 1900, Tesla appeared at my shop again. He looked older, more tired than before, but his eyes still held that same electric intensity. "William," he said, "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For listening, for believing, for not laughing at my ideas like so many others do." Tesla sat down heavily in the chair beside my workbench. "My wireless power project has run into difficulties. The investors are nervous about putting more money into something they don't understand, and Edison's people are spreading rumors that my experiments are dangerous." "Are they dangerous?" Tesla considered the question carefully. Any powerful technology can be dangerous if misused. Fire can cook your food or burn down your house, but the potential benefits far outweigh the risks. Imagine a world where no one lacks for electrical power, where communication is instantaneous and universal, where the resources now spent on power lines and telegraph cables can be used for education, for art, for exploring the stars themselves. Over the next few years, I watched Tesla struggle to bring his wireless power vision to reality. His Wardenclyffe Tower grew taller and taller, bristling with electrical equipment and strange antenna arrays. But the funding grew scarcer and scarcer, until finally the project was abandoned. Tesla never quite got over that disappointment. When I saw him in later years, there was a sadness in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He had seen the future clearly, had held the key to unlimited clean energy in his hands, but couldn't convince the world to embrace it. "Perhaps I was born too early," he told me once. "Perhaps humanity needs to suffer through a few more decades of scarcity and pollution before they're ready to accept free energy." But Tesla never stopped inventing. Throughout the early decades of the 20th century, he continued to produce breakthrough after breakthrough. Radio-controlled vehicles, wireless lighting systems, rotating magnetic fields, polyphase power generation. The patents poured out of his laboratory in an endless stream. I remember one particularly remarkable visit in 1909. Tesla had just returned from Colorado Springs, where he had been conducting high-power electrical experiments. His eyes were bright with excitement as he described what he had accomplished. "William," he said, "I have succeeded in transmitting electrical power completely without wires. In Colorado, I built a transmitting station that could send power through the Earth itself to receivers hundreds of miles away. I lit up banks of incandescent bulbs from a distance of 26 miles, using nothing but the electrical conductivity of the planet itself." "That's incredible. Why haven't I heard about this in the newspapers?" Tesla's expression darkened. "Because certain powerful interests don't want the public to know about free energy. If electricity can be transmitted without wires, without power plants, without infrastructure that they own and control, what happens to their profits?" It was a question that would haunt Tesla for the rest of his life. Time and again, he would develop technologies that could benefit all humanity, only to see them suppressed or ignored by people who had financial interests in maintaining the status quo. But Tesla's greatest contributions to human civilization were already secured. His alternating current system had become the foundation of the electrical grid that powered the modern world. His rotating magnetic field principle was the basis for every electric motor. His wireless transmission techniques were the foundation of radio, television, and eventually the internet itself. I continued to visit Tesla occasionally through the 1920s and 1930s. He grew more eccentric with age, developing elaborate rituals around eating and cleanliness, claiming to communicate with pigeons, making grandiose pronouncements about death rays and earthquake machines. But underneath all the eccentricity, he remained the same brilliant, driven man I had met in 1899. One of our last conversations took place in 1940, when Tesla was 84 years old and living in a small room at the New Yorker Hotel. His health was failing, his money was nearly gone, but his mind was as sharp as ever. "William," he said, "I want to tell you something important. In my room upstairs, I have blueprints and notes for inventions that could change the world even more dramatically than alternating current did. Wireless power transmission, weather control, gravitational propulsion, direct conversion of matter to energy. Why don't you publish them?" Tesla shook his head sadly. "The world isn't ready. These technologies in the wrong hands could be used as weapons of unimaginable destruction. I've decided to keep them secret until humanity develops the wisdom to use such power responsibly." "When will that be?" "Perhaps in 50 years, perhaps in 100. But someday, William, someone will discover these principles independently. When they do, I hope they remember the choice I made and use their knowledge wisely." Tesla died 3 years later, in January 1943. Immediately after his death, agents from the U.S. government seized all his personal papers and notes. Officially, they said this was to prevent Tesla's secrets from falling into enemy hands during the war. But I always suspected there was more to it than that. Some of Tesla's predictions came true much sooner than even he expected. Within 20 years of his death, transistors and integrated circuits had made his vision of personal wireless communication devices a reality. By the 1970s, people were indeed carrying small devices that could connect them instantly to anyone in the world. The Internet, which became widely available in the 1990s, was essentially the world wireless system that Tesla had described to me in 1899. Suddenly, all human knowledge was available to anyone with a connection, just as he had predicted. But other Tesla predictions are still waiting to be fulfilled. We still don't have the free wireless power transmission system he envisioned. We still burn fossil fuels and debate energy policy, when Tesla showed us more than a century ago how to tap into the Earth's own electrical charge. I'm 97 years old now, and I've lived long enough to see many of Tesla's impossible dreams become everyday reality. Every time I use a wireless device, every time I flip a light switch, every time I watch electricity flow through the power grid, I remember that night in 1899 when a wild-haired inventor showed me lightning dancing between his fingers. Tesla was more than just a great inventor. He was a visionary who saw that technology should serve humanity, not just generate profits for the few. He believed that scientific knowledge belonged to everyone, and that the greatest inventions were those that lifted up all of mankind. The tragedy of Tesla's life is that he lived in a time when such idealism often clashed with economic reality. He could have been the richest man in the world if he had been willing to hoard his discoveries and charge whatever the market would bear. Instead, he gave them away freely, believing that human progress was more important than personal wealth. But maybe that wasn't a tragedy after all. Maybe Tesla knew exactly what he was doing. By refusing to commercialize his greatest discoveries, by keeping some of his most powerful inventions secret, he ensured that his legacy would be about human advancement rather than corporate profit. Today, when I see young people working on renewable energy, on wireless power transmission, on technologies that could make clean energy available to everyone on Earth, I think of Tesla. His dream of free, clean, abundant energy for all humanity is still alive. It may take another century to achieve, but someday, someone will finish what Nikola Tesla started. And when that happens, when every person on Earth has access to all the energy they need, when wireless power flows as freely as sunlight, when scarcity becomes a thing of the past, people will remember the tall, thin man with electric eyes who first dared to dream such dreams. Tesla often told me that genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. But I think he had it backwards. What made Tesla truly great wasn't his ability to work hard. Lots of people work hard. What made him special was that he could see possibilities that no one else could imagine. He looked at lightning and saw wireless power. He looked at rotating magnetic fields and saw the motors that would drive industrial civilization. He looked at radio waves and saw a world connected by invisible threads of communication. Most importantly, he looked at the struggles of ordinary people, people working by candlelight, people unable to communicate across distances, people limited by the boundaries of what seemed possible, and he saw solutions. That's the real lesson of Tesla's life. Not just that he was a great inventor, but that he used his gifts in service of a larger vision. He believed that technology should free people from drudgery, connect them across vast distances, and give everyone access to the tools they need to live with dignity. Tesla's greatest invention wasn't the AC motor or wireless communication or any single device. His greatest invention was a new way of thinking about what technology could be. Not just a tool for generating wealth or gaining power over others, but a force for human liberation. Every time you turn on a light, every time you send a message across the world in an instant, every time you use electricity to make your life easier or more connected, you're experiencing Tesla's legacy. But more than that, you're participating in his dream of a world where the fruits of human genius belong to everyone. The story of Nikola Tesla is still being written. Every young person who studies science, every inventor working on clean energy, every engineer pushing the boundaries of what's possible is continuing Tesla's work. Maybe one of you listening to this story will be the one to finally crack the code of wireless power transmission. Maybe one of you will discover how to tap into the Earth's own electrical field and provide free energy to everyone on the planet. If so, remember Tesla's example. Remember that the greatest inventions are those that serve all humanity, not just those who can afford to pay for them. Remember that true genius lies not in hoarding knowledge, but in sharing it freely. And remember that even the most impossible dream can become reality if someone has the courage to pursue it against all odds. That's the real magic of electricity, you see. It's not just about light bulbs and motors and communication devices. It's about the power to transform the world, to connect people across impossible distances, to turn the dreams of visionaries into the everyday reality of ordinary folks. Tesla understood this. He knew that electricity was more than just a physical phenomenon. It was a metaphor for human potential itself. Just as electrical current flows from areas of high potential to areas of low potential, human knowledge and creativity should flow from those who have been blessed with insight to those who need it most. When I think about Tesla now, more than 80 years after that first meeting in my repair shop, I don't just remember his inventions. I remember the look in his eyes when he talked about the future, the absolute certainty that humanity could do better, could live more fully, could reach for the stars themselves. That vision is Tesla's true legacy. Not the patents or the power systems or the wireless technologies, but the belief that human imagination has no limits, and that our greatest achievements are always just beyond the horizon of what seems possible today. So the next time you flip a switch and electricity instantly floods your room with light, think of Tesla. Think of a young man standing in a laboratory filled with crackling lightning, reaching out his hand to touch the very essence of the future itself. And remember that the future is still being written by people like you who refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. That's the end of my Tesla story, kids. But in a way, it's just the beginning. Because every time someone dreams of a better world and has the courage to work toward making it real, Tesla's story continues. The lightning is still dancing between our fingers. We just have to be brave enough to reach out and catch it.